Hi, so now we're going to get into technique. So the first thing I want to say is if you're a beginner, give yourself some time, be patient. You're going to have to train your body. Even if you're the smartest, most motivated person and you love music tremendously, your body has to catch up with that. Okay, so we're going to train it, but be patient. It's going to take a little while. The good news is you're in a great position to, from the very beginning, to just ingrain or imprint only good habits. If you're someone who's been playing for a while and you haven't studied formally or with a teacher that wasn't particularly attentive to good technique, you're going to have to break some of those habits, and that may take you a while and feel really difficult. But just stick with it, and then you'll be grateful for the rest of your life that you're able to play with optimal technique, which translates into your body working with you to be more expressive, more musical with the least effort. So it's really important to ingrain good technique. So let's get into it. I've got 6 main things I want to tell you right now for the left hand. So the first thing is that I want you, well, this is for both hands really, I want you to practice in a mirror. And you've got to look in the mirror to be attentive and aware of your left and right hand, your shoulders, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do this, you don't want to have your all the things I'm going to mention, you want to be able to check up on those as you're practicing in the mirror. Okay? So this is why if you've been in the practice rooms at colleges, very often they do have mirrors in them for singers to look at their posture, for all different kinds of instrumentalists to look at their fingers and their bodies. So that's what that's for. So number 1 is the mirror. Number 2, let's talk about our left hand. When you're pressing your fingers down, I want you to hit in your fingertip. Okay, so I don't want this string hitting down here, 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 here. It's got to be right in the tips. And the reason why is simple physics. When you have a smaller point of contact, the pressure will be applied more efficiently. You don't have to press as hard to get enough pressure to have the string ring clearly. Okay, so we want to hit on the very, very tip. Okay, think of a garden hose. When you've got a really tight aperture, the water flows through forcefully, right? When you open it up and that water's flowing through a bigger channel, it's less pressure, right? Okay, so that's the same concept here. If we're nice and arched, we really don't have to press that hard to get a nice, clean tone ringing. Okay? It's a misconception to think we have to have massive bloody calluses always. If you play with great technique, you don't have to have very big calluses at all. So number 2 was to arch your fingers and hit right in the fingertips. Let's talk about number 3. Number 3 is I want you to press those fingers right behind the frets. Okay? So if you look at the 3rd fret here, okay, you've got about an inch of where to decide to press your finger down. I want you to always press it with you can feel the fret right here on this side of the finger, okay? Don't be on the fret because it won't ring clearly when you're on it, but you want to be right behind it, okay? And then again, you're going to get the most efficient application of force. You don't have to press as hard. If you put your fingers back here, it's difficult. Now, sometimes we have chords, we'll have to stagger our fingers and they can't all be directly right behind the fret, okay? But in general, we want to really have our fingers as we play. Can you see how I'm almost always just right behind the fret there, and also that I'm arching and hitting in the fingertips? Let's talk about number 4. Number 4 is efficiency of motion, and that applies to both vertically, our fingers coming up and down, and horizontally, left to right, okay? So you're going to want to stretch these fingers out. It's going to take a few weeks, okay? But let's say I'm playing just these first 4 frets. You don't want to do this. Instead, you want your fingers to be stretched out. So it's just a really small motion to play the notes. Think about when you type on a computer, okay? Or even on your phone if you're texting someone. You're texting, most people text like this, okay? You don't lift your fingers up 6 inches, right? To type or anything. Or let's say you're playing a video game, an old style arcade game, okay? You don't lift your finger up like this to press the fire button if you want to press it quickly. You've got it down really, really close. So when our hand is in the air, hovering over the frets that we're responsible for, it's just a very tiny motion to actually press down. You can see there's not a lot of motion. You can pretend, a teacher told me once, to pretend there's an electric fence running above the strings, like maybe this high. And if your fingertips came up above that they would get shocked. So you want to keep everything really hovering and locked very, very close. Your knuckles, of course, can be up beyond that electric fence, okay? Number 5 is related to behind the neck. Okay, so if you just take your hand and hold it out in the air, almost like you're asleep, just relax your body completely. Your thumb might touch your first finger, might touch your second finger, might touch both, but I'm just completely relaxed now, okay? All I'm gonna do is kind of open up my fingers and put my thumb kind of over lining up with my second finger. And then I slide the neck in between, okay? So let me show you. So this, my thumb is in the middle of the back of the neck. It's not pressing very hard at all, okay? It's just there as a reference almost, okay? You don't want to press super hard. If you draw a clock face on the back of the neck, put your thumb at noon, okay? What you don't want to do is push your thumb out like this, okay? When you do this, it causes people to push their wrist up like this as well. And we want our wrist actually to be more straight or even indented a tiny bit, not to the point of pain, but a little bit so that you're out in front of the neck, right? So your fingers can hit in those fingertips. When your thumb comes over the top, unless you have a huge hand, it really inhibits our ability to have all that stretching and pre-placement and efficiency of motion that I mentioned, right? Some players are great players, but they play with bad technique. Thumb over the top of the neck, fingers making huge motions. That's great. I don't want to diminish their music. But it's really better to train yourself to do it the right way, and it won't affect your ability to play soulfully or kind of raw music as well. You'll have that good technique for the rest of your life. So I like to put my thumb down, and then that rotates my fingers out so that I can really arch and hit in the fingertips, right? So if you take a look, this is what it looks like. And as I play, you can kind of see how my thumb doesn't really move much for. Kind of stays there. It might move a little bit like this or that, but it's basically in the middle of the back of the neck, 12 noon, pretty relaxed, lined up with my second finger in front of the neck. So let's say you've thought about all those things and you're still not getting notes to ring clearly, okay? Your guitar could not be set up correctly. So make sure your guitar is set up nicely. Your string shouldn't be super high up. I mentioned that in the welcome video that I gave you. You want your action, which is the height of your strings above the fretboard, to not be super high. This is a classical guitar, so they are higher than they would be on an electric or other types of guitars, but it's still not, this is not a very, very high action. For you guys, you want it as low as possible without it buzzing, and then you don't have to press very hard. But let's say your guitar is set up nicely and you're still getting some notes that are not ringing so clearly. There's a little mnemonic memory device that I came up with called the 3 Ps, which is just pressure, posture, and placement. So if you ever have a note that's not ringing well, check your posture, which more than your body posture, what I mean is your fingers. Are you arching and hitting in your fingertips? Pressure, we do actually have to press a little bit, so make sure you're pressing hard enough. If you're a brand new beginner, you might be surprised at how hard you have to press down. And placement is making sure it's right behind the neck. So again, the 6 things I mentioned was number 1, practicing in a mirror. Number 2, arching your fingers and hitting in the fingertips. And the 3rd point was placing your fingers directly behind the frets. Then number 4 was efficiency of motion, both vertically and horizontally. 5 was your wrist is completely relaxed, maybe angled a little bit forward. Your thumb is in the middle of the back of the neck at 12 noon, not pressing too hard, okay, so that your fingers can arch and come out in front. And lastly, if you need to kind of check yourself, think of the 3 Ps, pressure, posture, and placement. Okay, so that's the left hand. Now, let's move on to the right hand. And in my class, it's cool if you want to play with a pick or with your fingers. I would say the pick is actually easier to start with. So let me walk you through the pick. First thing is, I should confess that I don't play with a pick anymore. I did for many, many years. I started out playing metal and rock and stuff like that. Then as I started studying classical and flamenco and Brazilian, I felt that it was too hard for me to really master classical guitar technique and still be playing my electric stuff with the pick. So I decided to start playing electric without a pick, which is pretty unconventional. So just bear that in mind if you see me in all my videos playing with my fingers. If you're a pick player, that's really the way most people play the guitar in the world, depending on the genre. If you're a flamenco player, a classical player, a Brazilian player, you're going to be playing with your fingers, okay? But let's talk about the pick. I would go out, I would buy an assortment, buy some light, some medium, some heavies, different shapes, you know, some have little textures on the pick so that it doesn't move around so much. What I do, and there's other options as well. If you found something that you like, you want to take a video and show it to me or ask me if it's okay, I'm glad to check it out, right? There's some very fine players that play with different picking techniques than what I do. But what I do is I just, again, thinking of that mentality of playing with as little tension in the body as possible, or modifying our natural body tendencies as little as possible. If you're picking something up with your hand like this, okay? For me, I just close my hand and put my thumb, let it touch my index finger where it touches naturally without thinking about it, okay? Then I take the pick and I slide the tip, okay, that's going to be here. Okay, so the wider point, we slide that down, and then the tip is here. Now the pick is not completely on this side of my finger, nor is it completely on this side of my finger. It's kind of on both. My thumb is coming across it, okay? And just a little bit of the tip is sticking out. Okay, so this is the way that I do it. And then I let my fingers just relax, okay? I don't do this, because my hand, when I relax it, my fingers line up. Now, as I said before, I do know some teachers and some players that put the pick out like this, okay? But to me, that feels awkward, okay? I like to do it like this, okay? Now, the motion for picking, not strumming. We'll get into strumming later. There's another video on right hand technique for strumming. It's a very tiny motion from the wrist. Don't move this. Again, you might see some people doing this. That's not the best technique. It's better just to have it be a tiny motion from the wrist. Don't hold this super, super tight. Let it relax, okay, a little bit so that there's a little bit of flexibility. Otherwise, it won't even move through the string if you're holding it super tight. So let's talk about where we put the right hand. The right hand, we're gonna move it left and right expressively as we wanna get different tones from the guitar. When you play back here by the bridge, it's very bright sounding. When we play up here, it's a little bit warmer. Right, if you hear me strum a chord up here compared to here. Okay, but as a nice default position, just kind of right here over the middle or towards the rear of the sound hole is fine. Okay, and then you can move left and right to change the tone as you like. I like to put this part of my palm, okay, like right kind of here, on the low E and A strings, okay? So you might wonder, how are we gonna play those notes when we get down there? We'll talk about that. But for now, since we're starting out just on the high E string, it's fine, okay? So I can just go like this. You'll notice I went down and up, okay? And it's twice as efficient. If I go down, down, which of course we do in certain genres of music if we want that heavier sound, right? But it's half as efficient to go down, down, because to go down, you have to come up again, then down again, right? When you go down, up, you get 2 for 1, okay? So generally you wanna do down, up, okay? It's okay if you do consecutive downstrokes or consecutive upstrokes every now and then. But generally when you're playing notes, see, that's just a little teeny motion, down, up, okay? Don't put your pinky on the face of the guitar. Some people do that, and don't do that. It will hurt your wrist. It doesn't, not many people do that still, okay? Likewise, you don't want to put your palm on the face of the guitar, okay? So on those low strings. If that feels really uncomfortable to you, you can try putting your hand back on the bridge, particularly if you're playing electric, okay? So you can put your hand back here. The disadvantage to that is it gives you that brittle sound, or brittler sound that I mentioned before. But if you like putting your hand back here, that's cool. But for me, I don't really play with a pick anymore, but when I teach, okay, it's just like this. Okay. So just down, up, little motions from the wrist. This is not for strumming, okay? Strumming is later in the book, and there's a lesson on that and how we strum. That's a different thing. We'll get into that later, okay?